Om Namah Shivaya. Good evening. The Advaita Vedanta philosophy is dealing with basic 4 questions. The first question is, who am I? What is that which is I am? The second question is, what is the nature of this world? What is this world is all about? Where is it coming from? What is it made of? Etc. The third question is, who is God? Is there such a thing as God? What is his role? How old is he? And the last question is, what is the relationship between these 3? What is the relationship between myself, the world, and God? This is basically what the Vedanta philosophy is discussing. In the previous lectures, we mostly discussed the second question. We were trying to talk about the nature of the world. We said that underlying this reality, underlying this world, there is an ultimate reality. There is a ground being which we call Brahman. And we said that its nature is Satchit Ananda. We explained Sat in quite details this morning. And we didn't have time to go into the other 2 aspects, which is Chit and Ananda. I will just say in very short that Chit means consciousness. They say that Brahman, that reality which underlies everything, which is the ground of all creation, which is the only reality that exists, which is the canvas on which the world is painted. It is the screen on which the movie of our life is projected. That Brahman, its very nature is consciousness, Chit, Chaitanya. Then they say something even stranger, that same Brahman that we are talking about, its very nature also is Ananda. Ananda, for the moment we can say Ananda means bliss, absolute bliss. Bliss which is not relative. This is the very nature of that Brahman, and that we have to realize. At this point, I want to leave aside this question regarding the world, its nature, where it is coming from, and I want to pay some attention to the first question. The first question was, who am I? Right? As a matter of fact, the Upanishads are telling us that you don't really need 4 questions. It is enough to answer one. Hello? It is enough to answer one question. If you are able to answer the question, who am I? You will know the very nature of the world. You will know the very nature of God. You will know the relationship between everything. That's all you need to know. You need to know your true nature. Now I want to spend some time, not much, about this issue, about this problem. Who am I? Well, for most people, this question is a silly question. Why is it considered to be silly? Because we assume that we know the answer. It is very... Should we move to... Huh? He doesn't like me? Okay, it doesn't get... all right. Okay. For most people, this question is not a legitimate question. because we assume that we know very well the answer to this question. In the Advaita Vedanta system, we use a method which is called vicharana. Vicharana means self-inquiry. We analyze and inquire into the nature of the self, trying to figure out what is the real nature of the self. We don't have any axiomas. We don't have any assumptions. We just ask. We just try to find out, to figure out. In order to do it, there are different ways to dissect the individual person. You see here, sitting in front of you is a person called Swami Kashi. But it is complex. It involves so many things. There is the body here, there is the mind, the senses, the intellect, all kind of parts joined together and form something which we call Swami Kashi, and this is who I think that I am. In order to find out, in order to figure out if this is really the case, what we have to do, we have to break it down into parts. And we have to ask every part, is this really me? If it is not me, I have to reject it, to put it aside. And how do I know when something is not me? There are different ways to know it. For example, if I am there while something is not there, then that something cannot be me. Is it not? If I am here, but my car is in the parking lot, then I'm definitely not my car. Right? It's very simple. Why? Because if I was the car should be exactly where I am. Right? This is one simple method, one simple way to analyze and see it. Our identification is multi-layered. We have many layers of identification. The first layer, which is the most shallow one, is identification with our name. When somebody come and ask me, "Sir, who are you?" I said, "I'm Swami Kashi." Right? What is Swami Kashi? Swami Kashi is a sound, is a name. Just a few years ago, I had a different name. Does it mean that I was not there? Of course I was there before the name was there. If I was there before the name, then I cannot be the name. You see, this is the method. If I was there when there was Swami Kashi was not there, then I'm not Swami Kashi. Simple, right? Then, next level of identification is identification with the body. Actually, the Advaita Vedanta, one of the beautiful models they bring for this investigation is called the Pancha Kosha system. Many of you have learned about it. It is the system of the 5 koshas, the 5 sheath. What is this system all about? This system is simply taking the personality and divide it into 5 parts. It is not that really you have 5 sheets that covering something one another. It is not like this. It is just for the sake of discussion, for the sake of understanding, we are making here a distinction so we can focus and analyze and see, is this me? The first kosha that the Vedanta is talking about, it relates to the physical body. They call it Anandamaya Kosha, right? Which means basically that I am identifying with this physical body thinking this is me. The Shankaracharya in the Viveka Chudamani is giving many reasons why it cannot be the self. Okay? I will give you maybe 1 or 2, a couple of them. You see, the body is made of parts. Okay? If I am the body, then every part of the body should be me. Is it not? Take, for example, this hand. What is the difference between this hand and me? Well, there are many differences. One difference is that I know this hand, but this hand doesn't know me. Is it not? Does the hand knows me, or I know the hand? Of course, I'm the one who is knowing the hand. If I know the hand and the hand doesn't know me, how can it be identical? Right? It cannot. That which is me should be me, has the same qualities. But this hand doesn't have any intelligence in it. If I cut this hand, right, and put it over there, and then I sit and meditate, where am I? Am I here or I'm there? What is going to be the answer? I'm right here. This is not me. The moment it is gone, it is not me anymore. Why? What is the difference? Even while it is here connected, it is not more me than when it is there. It is not. This hand is inert. Inert means it doesn't have any intelligence in it. Whereas I am, the only thing that I know about myself is intelligence. I know that I know. And if somebody tells me I don't know if I know, even to know that you need to have intelligence. Right? Even to ask the question, you need to have awareness. This awareness is self-revealing. Okay? There are many other ways to discuss about it. We are just, because of shortage of time, we have to move forward. I'll give you one more example, just to show you. You see, there is water in this cup. Is this water me? What do you think? It's not me, right? And now? Is this water me? Can you tell me at which point it stopped being water and start being me? At no point. You see this? It cannot. This water, actually, if you try to make a border between this body and the world, you cannot. There is constant interaction between this world and the environment, this body and the environment. There is no such a thing which is body separate from everything. But this is not me. At no point this water is turning into me. I am not this body. Yet, I have a very strong identification with it. I have such a strong association that everything that is related to this body is considered to me as related to me, my own self. This is our mistake. The next level of identification is with the life force. This is called the Anandamaya Kosha. What is the meaning of the life force? It is quite simple, actually. This body is alive, right? We are not only identifying with the matter that is here, we are identifying with this livelihood, which is associated with the body. When the body is dead, we say there is no prana in it. When the body is alive, we say it is full of prana. That means that this livelihood, this live aspect, is something we identify with, and we think this is my own self. Shankaracharya in the Viveka-Chudamani very simply says, this energy which is giving life to this body is inert. What is the meaning inert? It doesn't have intelligence. Like any other power, like any other force in the universe, it is not endowed with consciousness, with awareness. Look at any form of energy, you will see that this energy doesn't know, doesn't have the capacity of recognition, of understanding, of comprehension. Even the life force in the body is something that I know. I am aware of the life in the body. The life in the body is not aware of me. Therefore, I cannot be this Anandamaya Kosha. Very simple. Next level of identification goes to the mind, Anandamaya Kosha. Okay, Shankara here is dividing the mind mostly into two parts. Anandamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. I don't want to get into great details now. It is not the place. But the mind basically has the faculty of sankalpa and vikalpa, of thinking and doubting. It is the basic, if you want, it is the monitor. If our mind is like a computer, the manas, the mind, the Anandamaya Kosha is like the monitor. Is this me? You see, we are going from the gross to the subtle. We started with the name. Everybody knows I'm not the name. Then the body. Okay, makes sense. But we are starting to go into subtler and subtler points. And we have to analyze it very carefully. What is the mind? What do you find in the mind? Well, let's see. We find perceptions, right? We find emotions, we find images, and we find thoughts. This is basically what we find in our mind. Perceptions is information that is coming from the senses. Right? Information that is carried from the external world with the senses inside, we call perceptions. Is this me? Am I a perception? Of course not, because it is coming from the external world. It is not coming from me even. Okay, we put it aside. What about emotions? Am I an emotion? Well, we tend to identify very strongly with our emotions, is it not? When I am very angry, let's see you come and tell me that I am not the anger. You're going to be in great trouble, I'm telling you, right? When we are in a strong emotion, we have a very strong identification with the mind. We think, he did it to me, and this is my right, and it should be like this. And it is true for every emotion. But is it so that I am these emotions? Well, again, there are different ways to see that it is ridiculous to think like this. I cannot be the emotions. Why? First of all, not always there are emotions. For example, in deep sleep, I have no emotions. Is anybody have any doubt regarding his or her own existence while you are in deep sleep? Do you think that you don't exist when you are in deep sleep? No, of course you know. When you wake up in the morning, you don't remember what was there, but you know that you existed. I am there in deep sleep, but emotions are definitely not there. If I am there and emotions are not there, I am not emotions. Finished. Right? Very simple. Very simple. I cannot be the emotions if I'm there when emotions are not there. Just as I cannot be my car when my car is in the parking and I am here. Moreover, emotions come and go. They tend to change. But I am that one who is left behind to see the changes of emotions. Yesterday I was angry. Today I am happy. Right? I am that one who knows that anger of yesterday, and I am the one who knows the happiness of today. How can I be? Am I the anger or am I the happiness? The emotions are constantly changing and replacing one another, whereas I am through all of them, and also when they are absent. and therefore I cannot be an emotion. What about the images that we have in our mind, our imagination, what we call? Is this the self? I close my eyes, I'm supposed to meditate, but instead I'm thinking about my friends, my enemies, my duties, what happened when I was 3 years old, right? That's what we do in meditation. Anything but repeating our mantras. So the question is, am I these images that appear in the mind? Again, the answer is simply no. Why? Because these images come and go. And I am there when they are there. I am there when they are not there. I am there throughout the changes of these images. And therefore it cannot be me. What is left? Thoughts. Right? Thoughts, same thing, same argument we can use. Thoughts come and go. We have a thought coming in the mind, existing and disappearing, a little bit like waves in the ocean. Right? We have this constant chat going on inside our head. Actually, it belongs more to the Vijnanamaya Kosha, to the next Kosha. It has to do with our intellect and ego, this inner chatter that is going on in our mind. These thoughts are a very strong factor of identification. Even if we are able somehow to reject the body as not me, to reject the emotions, the prana, whatever, when it comes to the ego, when it comes to the intellect that is chatting constantly inside our head, we tend to identify with it very strongly. And it is very difficult to objectify it, to watch it, to observe it. Is this inner voice, inner sound that is going on in the mind, is this me? Is this my own self? Advaita Vedanta says no. Why? Many ways to look at it. Close your eyes and observe this inner voice in your head. Can you do that? Why not? Just close the eyes and you watch. You observe the passage of thoughts, the procession of thoughts in your own mind. Now, you are the observer and the thoughts are being observed. You are the subject and these thoughts are the objects. Therefore, you cannot be these thoughts. Right? You are the knower, and these thoughts are known by you, and therefore it is not you. We have to reject even this Vijnanamaya Kosha. The last kosha, the last covering of the self, according to this model of the 5 koshas, is called Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha is called the bliss-permeated sheath, which means basically it is actually quite a strange covering for the self because it is made of something very peculiar. You know what is the Anandamaya Kosha is made of? It is made of ignorance. It is a sheath, a covering, which is made out of ignorance. How can something be made out of absence? We are not going to get into it. This is philosophical discussion for another time. But the point is that Shankara explains that this Anandamaya Kosha is responsible for the different experiences of happiness we have during the day. As a matter of fact, he says this is the ground. When do we experience the Anandamaya Kosha most? When do we experience it as it is? Shankara says in deep sleep. When you are in deep sleep, you are experiencing your Anandamaya Kosha because all the other koshas are out of the way. When you wake up, you experience it only when you have experience of joy and happiness. Okay, we will not get deeper into it. But the point is that first of all, this ananda, experience of joy and happiness and pleasure, is not aware of itself, is not of the nature of consciousness. In itself also is jada, is inert. Second is that, like we said regarding the other koshas, the experience of ananda is constantly changing. Whereas I am that one who is changeless and is constantly aware of the different experiences of joy. And therefore, I cannot be even the Anandamaya Kosha, which is so thin that is almost resembling the self completely. What is the idea? The idea is that the nature of the self is pure bliss. And this covering of ignorance is so thin that the bliss of the self is permeating it. This is the idea. But even this Anandamaya Kosha is not who am I, is not the self. Then who am I? At this point in this text, the Viveka Chudamani, Shankara is explaining that witness, awareness, consciousness, which is witnessing the 5 koshas and their functions, this is the self. Shankara is telling us that once you remove and negate all these 5 koshas, at the bottom, at the ground of all this remains awareness, pure consciousness, which is the witness of all these changes. This, he says, is the self. And he is asking us to do this exercise. He is asking us to practice this, what he calls neti-neti, this process of negation, by which we negate all the 5 koshas one after another, and ultimately we are left with the substratum, with that awareness, that witness. Now, the question is it possible to know that witness? Is it possible to know that consciousness, that self? Shankara says no. You cannot know it. Why you cannot know it? At least you cannot know it in the ordinary way. Okay? Why? Because this consciousness that you are talking about, it is never the known, it is always the knower. It is never the object, it is always the subject. About whom we are talking? This consciousness that we are talking about, who is it? It is me. It is myself. It is not something external. It is not something else other than myself. I, myself, am that pure consciousness which is the witness of the 5 koshas. Therefore, as the knower, always being the knower, I can never be the object of knowledge. In order to become the object of knowledge, I need to get out of myself and become something else, which I am not. And therefore, you cannot know the self. When in Vedanta, when in the Advaita Vedanta school, we talk about knowledge of the self, we refer to what the Veda says, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. We says, there is no such a thing as knower of the self. The knower of the self become the self, or the knower of the self is the self itself. Basically, you can think about it in the following way. Right now, right here, you are your own self. You don't need to become anything. You are that self, that pure consciousness. But this knowledge is clouded, is covered up by a lot of impurities of different natures. You don't need to become the self. You only need to remove all the other impurities. You only need to negate all that which is not the self, and what is left behind. This is the self. There is a little story about a person who returns back to his village after many, many years of absence. He used to have a very good friend in that village who was a very rich person, very wealthy person. And he goes to visit him in his house. But instead, he finds out that in the place where there used to be this big villa, this big house, now he's standing a dilapidated house. Everything is falling apart. And he looks inside. He sees one beggar, one thin guy sitting there, very hungry looking, sitting on a heap of rubbles. And he's asking him, hey, many years ago, you used to live here, my friend. He tells him the name. Do you know this person? He says, yes, of course, that was my father. He says, what? Your father? So how come you are in this state? Your father was a very wealthy person. He says, no, my father was very poor. He just pretended to be rich. He didn't have anything. He said, no, what are you talking about? I know, I was his partner. He had a lot of money. He says, listen, I don't know anything. One day my father had a heart attack. He died. In the bank there was nothing. I made some bad moves and here I am. That person says, no, your father was a very wealthy person. He didn't believe in banks, it's true. He used to keep all his money under the floor. Actually, right under the place where you are sitting now, your father kept a big box full of diamonds and gold and money. He says, I don't know. Just find out, check out, dig up. Okay, he has nothing better to do. He starts digging, removing all the rubbers, pulling the tiles that were there and digging. And to his great amazement, he's finding a big chest. And when he opens it, it is full of diamonds and gold and money. And he realizes he is the richest person in town. Right? Now, the simple question is, 5 minutes before he found this treasure, was he a rich person or was he a poor person? What do you think? Well, this money all belongs to whom? It belonged to him only, right? So he was the richest person in town. That's the fact. But it is also a fact that he didn't know where he is going to get his next meal. He was the poorest person in town. What was the difference? What is the difference? The difference is knowledge versus ignorance. Not knowing that you have all this money is the same as being poor. Realizing that you have this money is the same as becoming rich. He didn't become rich, he was rich already. Is it not? You don't need to become happy. You just have to realize that happiness is your very nature. You have to drop the idea that you are a miserable, limited human being. Yeah. This is what Vedanta is all about. It's not about finding something which is not there, was not there before. It is just about giving up your false notions, your ideas, your impurities. Your identity, your very identity is something you have to give up. That's why it is so difficult. Shankaracharya is explaining that this is the self. This is who you are. You are. And now we are going to connect these two questions about the world and about the self. What did we say about Brahman? We said that Brahman, that which is the ground of all being, is of what nature? Sat, Chit, Ananda. It is of the nature of existence, it exists. It is like the space. Remember the example of the inner space, outer space? It is like the space. It is one. It is changeless. It is all-pervading. It is of the nature of consciousness, of awareness, and absolute bliss. This is what we said about Brahman. What Shankara is telling us now, that Brahman, which is the ground of everything, it is your own self. It is not something else. You are that pure consciousness, which is the self. Tomorrow morning, we are going to discuss about the 4 Mahavakyas, the great proclamations, by which this knowledge is coming about, by which the teacher is initiating the student into this knowledge. So I'm going to conclude here. I would just say in one sentence, some people ask me about the things I do, and also ask me about how to continue to study this. So I'm not going to say much, just that I do some retreats in India and elsewhere in the world in which we study in much greater details this knowledge. And also I conduct some yatras or pilgrimages in North India. And anyone who is interested in any of this is welcome to take one of these flyers after the satsang. And that's the end of the promotion part of this evening. And now we are going to conclude with one moment of silence and a short prayer.